What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. Kind of a bonus one. I mean, yeah, we usually do like 5 reviews when we have enough stuff, but this one I definitely wanted to cover because I've been a fan of this band for a long time. So today I'm going to go over the latest offering from 16, Guides for the Misguided. This also comes out on the 7th of February on Relapse Records. This band formed in 1991 in Los Angeles, California. This is their 10th album overall. I got into this band with their first 2 albums, Curves That Kick and Drop. Actually, I got into them with the Relapse reissues of those albums. That's where I first heard them. I kind of picked them up on a whim, and I have been pretty much a fan ever since. In fact, we covered their last album, Into Dust, back when that dropped. And for those that don't know, this is, I would say, kind of an underground staple band in terms of sludge metal, mainly because I don't think they're necessarily just a sludge metal band. I feel like this band bridges the gap between hardcore and sludge, which, I mean, honestly isn't like the biggest gap, but still, they make a bridge. This band brings like that heavy, gloomy, just kind of like monotonous, chuggy sound that, you know, sludge is kind of known for, but also injects a lot of like more aggro hardcore vibes or post-hardcore. I've always described this band as a blend of bands like Crowbar, Fudge Tunnel, Iron Monkey, but also bands like Willhaven and Helmet, and maybe even a little bit of Unsane. Bands that are maybe not necessarily considered metal, but are definitely in the conversation when it comes down to heavy music in general and appeal to fans of metal. And this band has been very consistent over the years. They have a very particular style, again, kind of working that blend between 2 main styles here. But this one, I would say, explores maybe a little bit more melody than before. Into Dust definitely had its melodic aspects to it, but a lot of it was just built on these just heavy, grimy riffs. Nothing too flashy. It's very meat and potatoes, but it is seasoned well, and they pace their albums well. Much like the music, I think the vocals kind of like lurk in between styles too. You get these heavy, more hardcore roars, but when it comes down to the singing style, it's very gruff. It's more groaned, but tunefully. Definitely some comparisons to be made to Kirk Weinstein in that department. But also in terms of like the riff structure, when they do get down to these more like flat out, just kind of like doom-laden sludge metal sections, you kind of forget they're from LA. Generally, those moments kind of show up as like little bits of character that pop up on the bridges, or like just a moment towards the end of a song or something like that. Like sometimes they're not the entire song. Fire and Brimstone Inc. has just these flat out, very like later Corrosion of Conformity riffs. The song stomps in with isolated drums. You get some more like heavy metal harmonies. And then it kind of gets into this like more up-tempo, you know, kind of like aggressive song. Like you get these more machine gun riffs, and man, this guitar tone on here is just built to chug. But it has this more like kind of like upbeat, kind of like rocker chorus. Like it definitely reminded me of stuff off of like Deliverance or Wise Blood, and the leads too. The leads on this song in particular, how they're broken up, kind of have that Woody Weatherman feel, especially the leads on Deliverance. You also get some big Southern fried riffs in the song Fortress of Hate, which that really isn't like the bulk of that song. Honestly, that song reminded me more of Helmet than anything else. It has just a broken down, heavy post-hardcore riff. The groove is very straightforward and simple. The vocals, again, are more groaned but still tuneful. And pretty much everything on that song, minus this more Southern rock inspired bridge, sounds just very much akin to like 90s heavy music in general. Again, stuff that was like more along the lines of like just heavy but not necessarily metal. But that sludgy bridge kind of brings it all together. But when they really just take it on, namely on the song Blood Atonement Blues, which I think is one of the best songs on there, that is pure Crowbar levels of gloom and doom. You have those very somber, harmonized riffs. It's slower, it's more plodding. And honestly, it's probably one of the more melodic songs despite it being heavier than hell. Like every riff on that song is just bludgeoning, droning. Again, the guitar tone, gigantic. But the whole production on here, I think, is pretty excellent. The drums have a great sound. The vocals sit in a nice spot. It's dominated by guitars, but dominated by guitars in a good way, where they're not like overpowering everything, but they have like a solid presence. And this song in particular, I think they absolutely shine. You have these big, heavy, lumbering chugs on the chorus, And this is predominantly clean vocals or cleaner vocals on here, and it really works on here. The song sounds more moody and forlorn. The chorus on that song is absolutely huge. And honestly, like with this band, I'm not expecting like huge choruses where you're like, wow, that's like a legit huge hook. Generally, I expect something that is like a little bit like just more menacing and dark, like not full bore like I Hate God or anything like that, or even like Soylent Green, but I expect more of the melody to actually come from the guitars and such rather than the vocals. But the vocals on here are honestly pretty damn good. That isn't to say I think the vocals on any of their albums are really bad. They just have a very particular style. And for the most part, they go for those very aggressive, just, you know, gonna like dry sounding growls and screams. And honestly, that can kind of work for just about everything this band does, but I really like the inclusion of more melodic vocals on here to really kind of like cement the melodies that are presented in the music. A lot of the songs in here, I feel, are built on these same components, but these are like very strong components. They have a solid foundation. You have lots of groove, you have big solid riffs, and while there isn't a lot of like intricacies to their sound, there are dynamics, and the way this album is paced, it breaks it up a lot. You have a lot of like varying tempos on here. Like this isn't all like down in the dumps, super slow sludge, and it's not all like D-beat oriented or anything like that. It really does mix it up a lot. Hat on a Bed and Desperation Angel are notably more up-tempo, a little bit more energetic. Most of this kind of hangs out in a mid-tempo groove where they just kind of like latch onto a big chuggy riff and kind of just dry hump it up until they get down to the chorus, where you get like, again, like some surprises in terms of melody, whether it's like lead melodies that come in, really awesome bluesy solos. The solos on the last track, Kick Out the Chair in particular, I absolutely love them. There's just lots of bends, lots of feel to them. You even get some really cool clean guitars that open up the song, but they have this like volume swell at the end of them. I just kind of like that effect. But outside of that, you get like some stuff for additional atmosphere, whether it's like weird vocal oscillation, which is on the really interesting cover of Give Thanks and Praises, originally done by Bad Brains. I really wasn't expecting a Bad Brains cover on here, but they did it. Or the somber but haunting pianos that open up Blood Atonement Blues, or Hat on the Bed has, I don't know, like a bit of like tribal percussion in the background. It's very faint. It might just be like some sort of like, you know, little accent the drummer is doing, but it feels like there's like a little bit of like hand drums or something in the background. It kind of gives like that more like up-tempo boogie, like an extra little kick to it. Either way, I would still describe this as like very minimalist, but again, they just do a little bit extra to kind of like add something to the songs to make them stand out more. Resurrection Day, I think, is a good example of kind of like a little bit of everything that they do on here in terms of like just spicing up the songs. Comes in with these lurching, menacing, very dark riffs. Honestly, the tone on that song initially is just, I don't know, very somber but very angry about it. You get a good mix of off-time grooves and then just like straight up 4/4 time ones. It's got the big chuggy syncopated riffs that you pretty much expect from this band, but it has this really interesting atmospheric dropout and build. It drops out, you know, I would say about like halfway through the song, maybe like, you know, a third of the way through the song. And you get this like kind of atmospheric hum, and it sounds like muttered voices and whispers. And then it starts building back up with the drums, and it builds back into this giant, heavy doom section, like single chords. They let them drone out. It's easily the slowest, darkest moment on this entire album. And they literally just take that and roll out with it. Like, that's the big closer, and they draw it out. I like how they found a way to get like even heavier, despite that song being particularly heavy. But I like that this band mixes up the type of heavy that they do. Again, some of these songs feel a little bit more hardcore oriented. Some of them feel almost kind of like that straightforward propane kind of like groove metal. And then you have these big atmospheric sections and like droning riffs or kind of like Willhaven. And of course, crowbar level harmonies. That is a lot of stuff I love. But in terms of builds, it got even better on Kick Out the Chair, which is the longest track on here. And I think, again, one of like the most dynamic. For the most part, it does what a lot of these songs do. Big chuggy riffs, you get some doomier sections. But it has this transition near the end where it picks up on this much brighter, much more classic heavy metal riff. Like, once you start hearing this riff, it has a more like ascending melody rather than dragging you down to the pits of despair, where I assume like a lot of this discography lurks. It has like almost like classic Scorpions or Ozzy Osbourne sort of vibe. It's just got this great melodic hook. And then this lead comes in just dripping with classic heavy metal phrasing. It's another giant standout on here that I just absolutely loved. And closing out the album with that, I think is awesome. But they did make sure to bookend that intro with the guitar swells and clean stuff. Enjoyed the hell out of that. Now, in terms of any negatives on here, I do feel like some of these songs might be a little bit more bland than others. Like Fortress of Hate, while I do like that kind of like broken down, kind of like Helmet sort of vibe on there, it's not the most interesting song. Like, yes, it's aggressive, it's got big riffs, but well, all these songs do. And while I did enjoy the Bad Brains cover for just sort of the novelty of it, and to 16's credit, they definitely make it their own. Comes in with the lumbering heavy riffs and then breaks in these punky D beats. It's noisy, it's rowdy. There's this weird like oscillating vocal effect, like dudes growling through a fan or something like that. I like that it does show off their love of punk and such, but the cover itself I thought was just kind of okay. But everything else in here I really enjoyed. This is just a very straightforward, straight to the riff sort of listen. And honestly, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I really dig this one. I've dug like the majority of this band's discography. I'd be hard-pressed to think of an album that I own by 16 that I don't enjoy, and I own just about all of them, maybe minus one. This delivers on pretty much exactly what I expected from the band. Big riffs, big chugs, heavy on the groove, but I think it does some other stuff really well, or at least they've gotten better at doing like slightly more melodic stuff. The melodic stuff in particular really hits. Kick Out the Chair, Blood Atonement Blues. Proudly Damned is also a big standout. Can't believe I forgot to talk about that one. I fucking love that song. There's definitely still a nostalgic appeal for at least me because I've been listening to this band for so long, but band's very similar. Again, I would compare a lot of this like Crowbar, Willhaven, Fudge Tunnel, stuff like that. Like, you know, bands I've been a fan of for a long time, but this band just executes the sound so damn well. If you're a big fan of literally all the bands that I've listed, plus maybe like a smattering of Down and a bit of Acid Bath in there, though not as dark and weird, check this album out. And if this is your first listen for this band, I recommend just kind of like walking backwards through their discography, because you're going to find a lot of killer stuff all the way till you get to their first album, in my opinion. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They were only 99 cents, and we offer a members-only live stream pretty much once a month, and we're going to try to make them like a little bit different, or just leave it up to you guys, whatever you guys want to talk about. You know, we're down for it. We like hanging out with you guys because it's a lot of fun. And the memberships are the new way to support the channel more directly. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our shirts and hats. That is linked down below in the video description. And of course, if you would like to become a member of this channel, there's a join button somewhere down here. Maybe here, maybe here. Not really sure. Either way, thank you guys for every bit of support you guys have given us. Again, it has been amazing doing this. Looking forward to overloading you guys with more reviews, more collection updates, more of everything. I've got some ideas for some other discussions whenever we get a chance to do those, and maybe some collaborations in the future. Who knows? There's a lot of possibilities with this channel. Either way, though, I definitely want to thank you guys one more time because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.